Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Andrew Good Camera, where I've spent 10 months shooting with and watched dozens of reviews about the Nikon Zf, all so I could compile for you the ultimate list of everything wrong with it. But Andrew, why would you do such a horrible thing when you've told us over and over again that you love the Nikon Zf and that it's one of your favorite cameras in the history of cameradom? Well, my dear viewer, I'm glad that you asked, because it is all for one very good reason, and that is views. I mean, so that Nikon will improve it in future versions. In all honesty, I absolutely love the Nikon Zf, but just like an imperfect spouse, after the honeymoon phase is over, its annoying little quirks have definitely revealed themselves. Even though I plan to stay married to it, I would certainly love it if it could work on the fact that it puts the toilet paper roll on the wrong way and chews with its mouth open. So here is my list of 10 things that I hate about or other people hate about the Nikon Zf, but why I would buy it again anyway. We will do this in order of the least annoying stuff to the most annoying, so to help ensure that you will watch all the way to the end of this video. I may be an annoying YouTuber, but at least I'm an honest annoying YouTuber. The Nikon Zf has 2 card slots, which on paper should satisfy the masses of people who complain about a single card slot on cameras. And in my first initial impressions about the Nikon Zf, I expressed that the micro SD card didn't bother me. After all, they're more affordable, and hey, at least it's 2 card slots. But many people have brought to my attention the fact that micro SD cards are slower performing, and thus if you're shooting with 2 cards at an event or something like that, and you plan to have some redundancy, then you will take a performance hit when doing so. That also might matter in a sports situation or birding, but for me, I don't shoot in high bursts, so I haven't noticed that. What bothers me about it is the usability. It's impossible to tell which direction the SD card is supposed to go in with the battery in it, and I worry about putting it in the wrong way and damaging it. That little tiny thing, it feels like I could break it. And beyond that, it's nearly impossible to insert or remove without removing the battery first, which is frustrating and a fiddly experience, especially if you're in the field. And again, it's a small SD card. It's easy to drop when you're fiddling around with the battery and trying to get it in and out. It's not a pleasant user experience. And beyond that, it's not super practical in the field. So for me, I don't even use the micro SD card anymore. And this camera might as well just have a single card slot and save the consumer a bit of money in my book, or do it right in future versions and just have 2 regular SD cards. Number 2! My next complaint is something that I'm really annoyed that we still have to bring up in 2024. We have self-driving cars, we have AI that can write novels, we have gene editing happening, I guess. But in spite of all that, we still can't connect a phone to a camera. Transferring photos from the Nikon Zf to a phone is a massive pain. The user experience makes very little sense. Why do I have to set up Bluetooth and a Wi-Fi hotspot? Why does it take 3 or 4 menus deep of an experience just to get it to connect? Why, after I've set everything up, does it randomly just stop working and never works again no matter what I do? And this isn't just me, an Android weirdo. Even you iOS users have reported issues with this. Image transferring often just not working, location tracking features being inconsistent, things like that. I've gone back to just using USB-C cable or transferring with the memory card directly to the computer. And to me, it's ridiculous that we do that. It's extremely frustrating to any of us who, when we're on vacation, with our kids, for instance, we just want to simply take a photo with our expensive, nice camera and get that onto our phone painlessly to be able to post immediately to social media or to send to loved ones. But instead, I find myself just taking photos with my phone because I just don't want to waste 20 minutes of my vacation faffing about with a device created in 2023 that has an image transfer process that looks like it's from 2012.
Number 3!
My next complaint comes through the lens of a Fuji shooter turned Nikon shooter. For the past near decade, I've shot mostly with Fuji devices for full-time photography, and I've come to really love the film color profiles that Fuji has perfected. While I don't often go so far as to shoot in JPEG only, I certainly use Fuji color profiles when editing RAW photos as a starting point and often an ending point. But the in-camera film look profiles on Nikon feel gimmicky to me. And for a camera that looks the way it does, it seems to me that Nikon wants to be taken seriously by a certain type of audience that not only appreciates the experience of shooting with a camera that follows that SLR user experience tradition, but to design a camera that looks like that, but then doesn't actually have the soul of a film camera in many ways, something that Fuji did get right with the attention that they gave their color profiles. For me, I think this is a big miss. On the other hand, I do love Nikon's color right out of camera. Nikon's raw color philosophy does appeal to me more than it does Fuji, actually. And that's one reason that I do tolerate that lack of film profile. But we're not here to praise Nikon, so I'll stop doing that. On the other hand, I do love Nikon's colors right out of camera. Nikon's raw color philosophy does appeal to me. And if you want to know if it appeals to you when compared to other raw camera profiles, I would encourage you to go take a look at my blind test with different camera systems. But that's kind of why I guess I can put up with, or why I don't totally mind that Nikon ZF doesn't have those Filmic profiles, because the colors right out of camera are brilliant. But I digress. I shouldn't be complimenting the ZF. I know that's not the point of this video. We're here to trash it, so I'll get back to that. But before we get into the next thing, and while we're on the topic of color, I think it's as good a time as any to introduce this video's sponsor and one of my new favorite post-production tools for photography, and that is Lumina Neo. So let me show you how Lumina Neo has boosted my efficiency as a photographer and creative. I neglected to take a thumbnail for this video while I was shooting. So rather than go back down and set up shop again to get that perfect thumbnail shot, I'm just going to see if Lumina Neo can help me get a nice looking photo from a still shot from the video footage. Normally, this would be far too low quality to use as a photo, but let's see what Lumina Neo can do with it. The first thing I'll do is grab a preset that works super well for YouTube thumbnails, the orange and teal preset, which gives it a more vivid and cinematic vibe. This still is super soft though, so let's see if we can bring out some details through some added structure, and we'll get some help from AI to sharpen it up. Of course, in the process of bringing out these details, we also brought out a lot of noise in the image. So again, let's use Luminar's AI to reduce that noise. Finally, we'll use this awesome relight tool to change the brightness of the image both in the foreground and the background. So here's our before and after. And what you're looking at is probably now the thumbnail for the video that you're watching. And we got this made in mere minutes. Here, I'm also using some of those same tools on a portrait that Danae took a week ago of her sister and her kids. But the sky, unfortunately, got blown out in that photo. So we'll use Lumina Neo to add a sky back in that looks similar to the sunset sky that we had on that night. And then we'll use that relight tool again to dial it in. For me, I'm not big on the generative side of what AI is bringing to photography, but where AI is making our lives unquestionably easier is in the sharpness, noise, and other tools which help us get closer to the actual truth of the day of the shoot or the studio or the location that we were in. Where a camera is limited in its ability to bring the realism, some of these AI tools can bring it out. And Lumina Neo is pioneering these tools. If you would like to give Lumina Neo a try, be sure to tell them that I sent you by using the URL on the screen or in the description below. Thanks, Luminar, for sponsoring the video and also making photographers' lives easier.
Number 4.
Nikon's menu system doesn't bother me for the most part. Some complain it's not intuitive or easy to use, but after having shot with Nikon, Fuji, Panasonic, Sony, Canon, consuming thousands of reviews on those various brands and the cameras, there's one thing that I've come away with, and that is that all reviewers everywhere on all platforms will always complain about the menu navigation. It's just the easiest thing to attack. And camera menus, they're just almost always confusing because of the hundreds of features that they have to give you in not the best or ideal presentation. And the more advanced that our phones get when it comes to user experience, the more acute the pain of having to use a menu system on a camera like this gets. And so until our camera's UI functions similarly to phones, whether you think it should or not, we'll always have that complaint. So I don't want to put too much stock into the complaint about Nikon's menu system. Having said all that, there is one thing I really don't understand about the ZF menu system or Nikon's menu systems in general, and that is the custom settings menu. Nikon puts letters in front of each of the category of the UI customization and then a number when you drill down into those categories. Why? I do not understand it. And if it's to help with usability to be able to more quickly navigate to customization settings that you're after by using alphanumeric shortcuts to know where they are, I guess, why don't they do that everywhere? Why just in those settings? I've never been able to understand it. Maybe someone can explain it to me. I could be wrong about my assessment here, but to me, it feels kludgy, inconsistent, and weird. And I actually do product design full time, so I should know what I'm talking about here, but please, if I'm missing something, help me in the comments.
Number 5.
My next issue is only a small thing, but as a video creator, the placement of the mic port is frustrating. I really wish that it would clear the LCD screen. A microphone is the most common accessory that accompanies full articulating LCD screens like this, so you would have thought that Nikon would have placed it in a place that would clear the articulating screen both in function, but also visually. With the mic port comes out and it interferes with some of the screen when you're looking at yourself. And for a device that is so appealing to creators, run and gun creators, I think this is a big miss.
Number 6.
Nikon has created a special lens lineup which is designed to look like it belongs to the Z devices. These are the SE or special edition lenses. And while I appreciate the effort because I'm personally a massive fan of a more retro approach for many reasons, not just beauty, but there's a functional reason why as well that I won't go into in this video because I'm supposed to be an angry photographer for a minute. These lenses represent a massive miss because they have no aperture ring. This can be frustrating for users like me who naturally reach for that ring to expect or to have the ability to adjust an aperture. We're used to that, especially with a camera that looks like this. But sadly, the only moving ring on this is the focus ring, which you can change, but that would be silly. If you're only going to have one ring, it should be a focus ring, of course. But it's bizarre because it looks like there are two other rings, but those don't actually do anything. A clicked aperture would have been necessary to make this a truly retro experience. But even if they had added just the customizable ring that you could change the aperture with, or exposure compensation, or whatever people want, like the other Nikon and Canon mirrorless lenses that do have a customization ring, this lens has nothing. So some people complain that there are only two SE lenses, the 28 and the 40 millimeter, the 40 I have here. I personally don't care because I don't plan on using either of them anyway. Without an aperture ring, it's a non-starter. I'll be selling this one probably and investing in maybe Voigtlander lenses, which do have aperture rings and which come native to Nikon Z. And of course, I'll continue to use adapted lenses.
Number 7.
Many people complain about the ergonomics of the Nikon Zf, saying that it's hard to hold or get a good grip on. But I believe these folks are probably experiencing it in a way other than what it was designed for. Retro SLRs, like the way this looks, were typically experienced with smaller lenses, prime lenses often. Not so much with these behemoths that we have now with all that glass. Yes, with that huge lens and the retro stylings of the ZF, it's going to feel imbalanced, and you won't have that same grip that you would if you had purchased the Z6 II or the Z8. And I hate to break it to you folks, but you purchased the wrong camera. So even though I'm supposed to be trashing the Nikon ZF in this video, I can't fault the Z for this. I'm only bringing it up because so many people complain about the ergonomics of this camera. And I guess I have to agree. It doesn't have the best ergonomics, especially if you have a massive lens on it. So why did you buy it?
Number 8.
One thing I've always appreciated about the Nikons, especially when I used to shoot with the DSLRs, was that extremely ergonomic joystick that they have. With the ZF, I have definitely felt that absence. But with the retro stylings, I see why you wouldn't have a joystick. I wouldn't necessarily expect, especially that big, massive joystick that you have on Nikon's other DSLRs. But maybe there's a happy medium. Maybe they could have just put the simple, small joystick like Fuji uses, and that would have done the job. As it stands, I really would appreciate the addition of a joystick, though. The D-pad just isn't as usable when it comes to focus point selection, and I really miss it.
Number 9.
My next issue is one that I didn't fully realize that I'd have to deal with when I purchased the camera. So excited was I to purchase a device that had these beautiful vintage Nikon stylings with the ability to shoot in 4K 60p that I neglected to read the fine print, and that is that there's a significant crop factor when shooting in this mode. As a hybrid photo and video shooter, and for someone who loves shooting in 4K 60p so that I can potentially slow down any footage that I need to in post, I find this extremely disappointing, and I hope that Nikon can find a way to bring 4K 60p without a crop in the future.
Number 10.
On the other hand, I can appreciate the difficulty of supporting 4K, let alone with a crop on a camera like this with that slim styling. There are several costs with that design that are actually a bigger issue than just the crop, and that's overheating. I've experienced that when shooting in 4K primarily. Now, I know that by purchasing a camera like this, I need to not be a hypocrite. I should have known what I was purchasing, which is something designed to work primarily as a photography device that can shoot video, not as a performance video device. But I am surprised that I haven't heard more people talk about the 4K limitations. I've attempted to film several times in 4K for extended period of times, and I've had to give up and shoot in 1080p because of the overheating. Fortunately, it wasn't the end of the world in those settings, but for any real professional video endeavors, I know that this isn't the camera that I could rely on, and I'll probably have to move to something else and not the ZF, and just use the ZF primarily for photo. In the meantime, though, if Nikon could figure out a way to limit that overheating on future Nikon ZF devices, that would be pretty amazing. I don't have high hopes, though. But that's all I could really come up with. 10 things that I or others hate about the ZF. But if it wasn't apparent when going through that list, this is a really hard camera for me to hate. There are some quirks, of course, but just like my wife tolerates my issues and stays married to me because of my beautiful body, I also can't quit this beautiful, wonderful device, and I do plan to shoot with it for many happy years to come. But if you can think of anything I missed, let me know. And in the meantime, remember to do good with your cameras, and we'll talk to you again real soon.